that all is insane, but that's what we're seeing, the evolution of there's such a high demand for veterinarians that veterinarians have all the power. Frankly, they need you.
Welcome to Vet Life Reimagined. I do believe you have the power to create a career and a life you love. In this episode, you will learn about the power of negotiation. My guest today has looked at dozens of contracts and knows the red flags to look for. Willie is known for his financial wisdom in the veterinary space, but that wasn't always the case. He finished a residency in lab animal medicine, and between him and his future wife, faced $400,000 in debt. And that's when he decided to learn. He is so passionate about financial well-being, he is working on a certification to be a financial advisor. This is a very fun and highly actionable episode, and make sure to stay to the end to hear the story behind Willie's nonprofit for Puerto Rico. It's a very cool story. Now, on to the conversation. When did you know that you even wanted to get into veterinary medicine?
That was, that's the only career that I thought of as a kid. Frankly, I had one uncle that was a vet, but I never worked with him. I had always just one dog at home, nothing like, I had a farm at my house, not a story like that. I went to undergrad at University of Puerto Rico. My passion kept going. Applied to vet school 3 years in a row, finally got in, and I'm a vet now.
That's awesome. And it allowed you to graduate about the same time I did. I was looking at your LinkedIn and I didn't realize that we graduated vet school at the same year and in the same state, but you were at Tuskegee and I was at Auburn. So we were very close. What was your vet school experience like? Did you kind of go in with an idea of what you might do, or what was that experience?
No, actually, so in the airport when I was leaving Puerto Rico, I met another colleague of mine, and she was not talkative at all. Her parents were with her. So her parents, I don't know how the conversation started, like, oh yeah, I'm going to vet school at the ski. And they're like, oh, our daughter too. I think she was so frightened. She's one of my best friends now, but she was so frightened that she didn't even speak. Her parents did all the speaking for her. And I'm like, oh, that's cool, blah, blah, blah. I would love to, meet you when we get to Alabama. And because frankly, I didn't know anybody at the school. I was just going to fly over there. I thought I was going to be the most focused person, study 4 years, and that's it. But I got there and there was 9 Puerto Ricans in my class. So a good group, and it was a good family-oriented university. And and then it was completely a different experience from what I thought. I actually had a great time, met great colleagues, of course, experienced new things, moving from Puerto Rico, going to Alabama. It was a great experience. I tried to do a lot of externships. I took advantage of being in the States and just like, I want to go travel, find places where I have friends where I could stay at and work at hospitals there. And that gave me the exposure to then decide what exactly I wanted to specialize on.
And so how did you decide after vet school what you would do next?
I followed the crowd. I applied for internships, rotating internships. That's, again, pretty much it. I actually spoke to some Western U students and I was asking, are internships popular? Because from what I'm hearing, it's just the salaries are so high that people are stopping, like, no, we're not looking into internships anymore. But when I graduated, internships were the thing. Like, you had to do an internship. And but in 4th year of vet school, one of my good friends told me, he knew I wanted to continue studying, specialize. He said, you should look into lab animal medicine. You have the personality of a lab animal vet. I did not know what that meant.
I was about to
ask. But I did go to visit a lab animal program and I loved it. So, I already had applied for the internship and whatnot. So I was just going to complete that. And then I knew after that, I'll apply for a lab animal residency.
Well, so can you help maybe other people who haven't stopped to think about lab animal medicine? Can you describe what about it you really liked?
I guess working every day is different. So working with different species help troubleshoot investigators. Um, some people would say you don't really have owners to deal with, which is a plus, but you do have investigators to deal with. So you definitely have to work with people. Um, yeah, I guess it's just every day for me is fairly new. You know, I get emails about, hey, I want to try this new model of this surgery or new species, or and again, it's for me, it's fun. I really enjoy what I do right now.
Very nice. And so after internship, did you go straight into your residency? How was that process?
Yeah, so I did my internship at a VCA hospital in Hollywood, Florida. And I applied for residencies, and fortunately, I matched on my number one choice, which was Missouri. And yeah, went over to Missouri after that.
Did you enjoy your residency?
Yeah, I think we started residency the same year, 2015, maybe. You know, actually, Missouri was, I hate the cold weather. I tell everybody this. I'm like, I did not enjoy living in Missouri because of the weather, but I did enjoy the University of Missouri. The people were great. I love football. So, you know, it was a good football college, football environment. And yeah, overall, my experience there is exactly what I expected. That was one of the programs that would interview in person. And when I went, the people, I was just like, that's why I ranked it number one. It was, oh, these people look pretty cool. They have like, it's family oriented and whatnot. And for me, 3 years there, that's the way it was. I had great mentors, overall, a great experience with my residency.
Yeah. I think we had really good residents across the board too, in all of our specialties. So that was really nice there at the University of Missouri. For again, back to people who might be interested, are there any unique things about a residency in lab animal medicine, or different career paths to consider, like beyond that? Like, what are all the places that you can go being a lab animal veterinarian?
Usually, you expect to work at a university, a large university, with a medical institution. Usually that's the bulk of the research. If the school has a medical, if the university has a medical school associated with it, usually they have a big animal research program. VA hospitals, veterans hospitals usually have a lab animal program. And of course, pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals definitely have a large program. I live in California. And San Diego, it's a hodgepodge of a bunch of pharmaceuticals. They're always hiring. They're usually like temporary jobs because they're doing, I guess, trying this device, see if it works, and if not, they'll skip and try the next one. So usually that's what you expect to work. So unfortunately, that does have some location issues. It's pretty location specific. But as far as what you do on the job, so there's people that do the residency, and some residencies are pretty much focused on research. So you can become a PhD while you do your residency and be a faculty member and do research as your career. Some will just do a clinical vet, which is a very common position where you'll be a clinical veterinarian for the animals. And some people will go into regulatory practices. So, of course, for our boards, we had to learn a lot of federal laws. If you, whatever state you are, you should know about your local laws. And then what is best practices in lab animal medicine as well. So again, there's a large regulatory component to it, and some people would just focus on that. Working with the IACUC, helping investigators create a proper protocol.
So, in all of this, where did your interest in finances come from? Because at one point you joined the Veterinary Financial Summit, and you have a big interest there. So, when did that start?
Okay, so I went to Missouri from 2015 to 2018. I know we're going to talk about this, but through my residency, I also co-founded a nonprofit that I'm still working on it, Veterinarians for Puerto Rico. But in 2018, when I finally graduated, I went to be a faculty member at University of Florida, and I started making a real salary after 9 years of education of postgraduate, I guess, after undergrad. So after that, finally started making real money, and it was like, oh wow, I have this $200,000 in debt. My wife, she was not my wife at the moment, my girlfriend, who was also a vet, also had $200,000 in debt. So I just said, how are we going to tackle this 400 plus $1,000 in debt? And just started hearing podcasts, reading books. And then I reached out to the moderator of the Debt Free Vets group in Facebook, which is a fairly big group, mostly focusing on finances. I think we're up to 12,000 members right now, and it's just vets and vet students. So and I became a moderator. And again, through that time, I saw myself helping other colleagues. As a lab animal vet, I like to read something and digest it, pretty much like reading a paper and evaluating it. So I started evaluating contracts for people, just looking at them and saying, yeah, this doesn't look right. Because of me being open about finances, people will also talk to me about their finances. And so I have a pretty good picture of what the salary should be in big cities. And again, that's pretty much how it evolved. And I was part of the leadership group last year for the Vet Financial Summit. So I learned a lot, traveled a bit for conferences, gave lectures. So that was great. And now I'm working towards a certification to become a financial counselor, an accredited financial counselor. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. So I'm really interested because you've been doing this now for a while, looking at different contracts, helping people. So in your perspective, over the past handful of years through the COVID pandemic and all of that, what is your perspective on the transition when it comes to contract negotiations, getting jobs, financial situations, all of that?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, when I graduated in 2014, pretty much everybody was doing an internship because the thought process was you need to do an internship if you want to specialize. And if you do an internship, you're probably going to get paid more if you go back to GP because you have this. They usually call it within 1 year, it's like being 3 to 5 years in GP. So that mentality of, you really have to be an amazing candidate to get a good job, as to what I'm seeing now, where companies are hiring, I guess not hiring, they're giving contracts to third-year vet students. And we're talking about six-digit contracts, six figures, contracts for people, for students. I didn't know what I wanted to do till I was in late fourth year. Like, how is a third year going to sign a contract saying, yeah, I'm going to go out and work as a GP practitioner right after vet school, and I'm going to get paid X amount of money. And when I start, you're going to give me a $30,000 sign-on bonus. That all is insane, but that's what we're seeing, the evolution of there's such a high demand for veterinarians that veterinarians have all the power. Frankly, the company does not have any power right now. They need you. We just interviewed somebody talking about these consolidators, and one trend that she was telling us was there was a trend through the pandemic of buying clinics, but now the trend is like, you know what? We kept buying, and now we don't have vets to get into those clinics. So we actually have to focus on our big clinics and make sure we're fully staffed there to then think about continuing buying clinics. So again, there's a big focus on we need more vets. Hence, you start seeing companies being open about, hey, we have $100,000 sign-on bonus. I'm not sure if you received that email, but a large company sent out an email and everybody went crazy. It's like, what's happening? But of course, it sounds great on paper, but it comes with attachments. It comes with a 3, 4, 5 year commitment. And frankly, I've moved so much around that for me, committing to 3 years it's already too much. Some people with families and whatnot, they might say, "Hey, I'm going to stay in this location for the future." But otherwise, myself, I can't commit to anywhere 3 to 5 years because I just don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if you're seeing this trend right now, like I am, but I'm seeing that people are hopping hospitals pretty frequently. So, I mean, just with that on top of it, I mean, are you seeing that as well? Like people don't seem to stay in the hospital?
I don't, of course, I don't like it, but, more power to them. They're moving because of money. Frankly, a lot of people have realized this is a job. This is a job. I want to get paid for my job. And yes, people are moving from clinic to clinic. Of course, hopefully they don't have a non-compete, which is another trend. There's a huge fight to take non-competes out of contracts, which I completely agree with. But that said, I much rather empower the person to negotiate the contract. So most contracts are renewed every year. So, and again, something nobody taught us this is hey, if your contract renews in a year, don't let it just renew, negotiate it that next year. So I'm seeing a lot of people also, I really like my clinic. I want to stay. So I'm going to just renegotiate. And I like it. I love it. Like they're doing on it. Both of them are doing the evaluation, the owner of the practice and the practitioner. They're evaluating themselves and saying, you know what, I've been doing a great job. I want to get paid more or whatnot. Some people can't pay more, but they'll be happy to give you a retention bonus to make sure that you stay another year or whatnot, which again, you're negotiating, and that's amazing.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if everybody knows these types of options, right? Like a bonus just for staying, those kinds of things. And so, I'm trying to think about me too. If I were going to have to negotiate, another year, first of all, this sounds intimidating, right? Mm-hmm. I'm sure a lot of people find negotiations in general intimidating. But that balance between, yes, I want money. Yes, I happen to know that the market is really good right now for me and that I have some negotiating power. But at the same time, like, I don't want to overdo it. How do you find that balance? And like, where are you kind of hearing from people when they ask you these questions, and what kind of advice do you give to them?
First thing I ask, people will randomly send me a contract and they're like, can you look at this? And I'm like, I could definitely look at it and tell you some red flags. But if you want the negotiating component of it, it's what do you want out of it? And I'm seeing a lot more people, going into, I really want quality of life. Yes, I want to get paid, but I just want to work 3 days a week. And I'm completely fine with that. And again, but you have to say, hey, you're not going to be able to make $200,000 if you just want to work 3 days a week, but you might be able to make 150, which is great salary, and working 3 days a week, amazing. And then if you work an extra shift, let's make sure that the contract states how much you're getting paid for that extra shift. So again, I'm just seeing a trend of, I ask people, what exactly do you want out of this contract? Somebody that just graduated, they might just want to hustle and get paid a large amount of money and work a bunch of shifts. And again, it just depends. What do you want at that point? I see a lot of specialists just asking, I want to work 4 days a week, or 4 days, 3-day weeks. And again, I agree. Like, my wife is about to finish her residency. She's like, man, I'm tired. I'm like, yeah, I know. I did a residency too. And yeah, it's tough. So, hey, more power to you if you say, I am just going to work 4 days a week. And again, if your main focus is not your salary, then go ahead and ask for that. Vacation time. Again, a lot of people focus on the salary, but there's a full compensation packet. Vacation time. I love to travel. So right now, if you don't offer more than at least 4 weeks off, I'm not going to take that job because I know I'm going to use those 4 weeks. I'll probably use 6 or 7 if you give it to me. And that doesn't mean I don't want to work. I am a hustler. Again, we've been talking about, I do a lot of things with my life, but definitely I like to travel. So yeah, at the end of the day, it depends what you want. And there's certain things that you can negotiate in the contract that people don't even think of. It's like continued education. I'm like, if you, we were talking about Vegas earlier. I'm like, if you go to Vegas, the conference's registration usually runs about $500. The hotel is going to run you $1,200. That $2,000 is gone instantly. So again, ask them for more money. You don't want to be penny pinching like, oh, I need to stay at this sketchy hotel so that I can save. Like, no, they're paying you to learn. Why not say, hey, you know what? It's about $4,000 or $5,000 actually for me to go to a conference and hopefully even maybe a conference and a wet lab, so I can learn skills that I can bring back to the hospital and bring up revenue.
Yeah, so, those are great points. And you're right. I know that when you're traveling, a lot of that is probably with your nonprofit. So it's just different work, right? Going back to some of these contracts, because I remember especially earlier in the pandemic when really people started to hurt to veterinarians and veterinary staff. People were offering to help pay back student loans. And student loans are such a big point that we tend to talk about in veterinary medicine that I could just see that being like a shiny object. And I didn't always know if that were necessarily the best option for everyone. And so when you're looking through some of these contracts, do you have kind of a trend of maybe some of the more common red flags to look for?
Red flags. First, the red flag is quickly look if there's a non-compete in the contract. That for me is a red flag. Why is that hospital so bad that they actually want to make sure that you don't work in that area? And the idea is they want to keep you for a long time. I'm hoping, they want a long-term investment. If it's a short-term investment, then that's a whole nother thing. But for me, if I were an owner, I really want a long-term vet. I would hate to have to train every year a new vet and whatnot. And even though they know what they're doing, it's tough. It takes, and a lot of people do not know how much time training, how much money and time training actually takes. So non-compete is one. And if they have a non-compete, make sure you're comfortable with it. I always, when I give a presentation, I give an example of Puerto Rico. Again, I know the market in Puerto Rico really well. And I have friends with a 5-mile radius non-compete. Puerto Rico is 30 miles wide. It's 100 miles long, 35 miles wide. So you're taking away, 1/5 of the island there, from north to south. So, and when we're talking about like a city, the metro area, that's how we call it, the metro area, you can't work in the metro area if it's a 5-mile radius. So again, even though it looks minimal, it might affect you depending on where you live. I have heard of non-competes, 5-10-mile non-competes in New York. That means you have to move across the city. And again, transportation and whatnot, those things are difficult. Of course, when you get to more remote areas and they start increasing to 20-25-mile radius, which still, it's too much. Again, I encourage people to look at a map and say, if I don't like this place, is there another place within my area that I like? And map that. And I like it when people bring back to me and say, you know what? Usually specialists already know like what specialty hospitals are in the area. And I love it that they say, yeah, this hospital is 5 miles from the other one. So definitely I don't want to sign 5-mile non-compete, which is amazing. I think everybody should be doing that. The other trend is sign-on bonuses. I love sign-on bonuses, especially for a new grad, coming from no money or negative because of student debt to, hey, we'll give you $60,000 if you sign for 2-3 years. That's amazing. That gives you a step up in life. Ideally, you don't use that money instantly. You save some for an emergency fund and whatnot. We can talk about finances a little bit, but my big thing is, can you really commit to that place for 3 years? And if your answer is maybe, make sure that the the sign-on bonus is prorated. Prorated means you work, let's do that example, $60,000 for 3 years. So every year you actually, $20,000 are yours. But the big thing is they're going to give you $60,000 in advance. So you just have to make sure that, again, you don't spend it, because if you don't stay for those 3 years, you're going to owe them something back. But that is prorated. If it's not prorated, you owe them the whole amount of money. And if you're 2 years in and you're like, I'm going to quit, and they're like, oh, then you got to give us about the $60,000. We were talking about non-competes. That's just a way to trap you. You don't have this. I am 100% sure you're not going to have the $60,000 to get them back. You're going to say, I'll suck it up for a year, which sucks.
Yeah, absolutely. And on top of all of this that you're talking about, I mean, location tends to be a pretty big deal for a lot of people. And so, if you want to stay in an area, definitely be listening to this and make sure that you are protecting yourself so you can still stay in that area. So absolutely.
Certainly.
Yeah. So sign-on bonuses are the second red flag. Anything else that kind of comes up with contract or advice that you give people when they're trying to figure out, a financial aspect to their career, whether they're early career or changing careers?
You started the conversation talking about student debt. Mm-hmm. And if people were offering to pay them off, whatnot, there's a lot of legalities that go into it. When the pandemic started, they're allowing, and again, I just don't know the numbers from the top of my head, but the company can max pay about $300 a month, and it has to be a defined plan. So the company actually has to have a written plan saying, hey, we're going to pay this amount of money to all of our associates. Some people have been winging it, and some people will say, we'll put $100,000 to your student debt. You probably will have to pay taxes on that amount if they do that. So again, there's a lot of legalities. I much rather you take the money, put it in your bank account, and then you figure out what you're going to do with it. And as far as student debt goes, that is a hot topic. Again, students graduating with $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 in debt. If you talk to them and let them know, hey, I'll pay your student debt, or I'll help you with it, of course, they'll just jump on it, because they're so afraid of this negative balance that they have just hanging around them. But first of all, you have to decide how you're going to pay the student debt off. And again, that will be another topic, but there's many options. Especially if your student loans are federal, there are many options to pay them off. You don't actually need to pay them off. There's plans for that. So first of all, you have to decide, how am I going to pay them off? And then worry about the other aspects of finances, because finances is usually personal. And it's hard for me to come with a cookie cutter, this is what you got to do, when, man, everybody's different. We were talking about location. Like, I don't know what location you want to live in. Like, maybe you want to live in a city. Your salary is going to be high. You might have to pay your student loans because your payments might be too high to do the income-driven repayment options and whatnot. So again, there's an overall picture that you have to take under account. But first things first, once you graduate, look at your student loans and try to understand them.
Yeah. Hey, thank you for watching Vet Life Reimagined. This is still a growing channel on YouTube, so liking the video, subscribing to the channel, leaving comments, and sharing the show all go a long way right now, and it is all seen and appreciated. I still have over 40 guests and many more videos on the channel that you can go back and listen to, like Justine Lee, i.e. Vet Girl, Dr. Brent Mayab, Alyssa Mages, Rob Trimble, Megan Parks, and many more. I've created playlist for you so you can dive in. You can listen to veterinary technicians, veterinarians, veterinary students. You could discover all of that and more if you go to the main page of the Vet Life Reimagined YouTube channel. The link is down below if you need it. Now back to the conversation.
Do you in general recommend people find financial counseling to kind of help them sit down and kind of go over their goals and situation?
I would highly recommend the student loan consult. Again, I used the company Student Loan Planner. That's actually how I got into finances. I started hearing Travis is the host of the show, Student Loan Planner podcast, and I actually paid them for the services, mostly because I wanted my wife to also understand her loans. And I highly recommend it. It's like $500, but it's so worth it. It gives you a peace of mind. It gives you an overall picture. Again, I feel like the biggest burden on most new grads is the student loans. And they think they're going to be confined to that for years or their life. And that's not true. That's not true. But you need a plan. You need to plan on how to tackle those.
Yeah. Oh, no, I think that's great advice. And I didn't know about that particular podcast that's specifically for student loans, which I think is nice because that is exactly what the specific issue. So that's great if you get someone who genuinely knows about student loan repayment. So that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, they usually with that they'll give you a short like finances spiel and how to save money or whatnot. And frankly, that's for now, that's all you need to hear. When you are 10 years out of vet school and you're making money, you're saving a lot of money. That's when if you do want a financial planner, you go ahead and do that. But for the basics, covering your debt, just do a student loan consult. It's just a one-time fee. You hear, the plan that you're going to do and move forward with it.
Yeah, great advice. So I want to make sure that we have time to also talk about your nonprofit, because I love the nonprofit and what you're doing, and I want to be able to share that with people on top of kind of allowing you to tell a little bit about, first of all, what it is, but what has the journey been like, from seeing the problem, deciding to do a nonprofit, which is a lot of work, and kind of where you are now with it.
So yeah, during my residency in Missouri, September 2017, Puerto Rico got hit by, at that point was a Category 4 hurricane. And I lost communication with my family. And there was another resident, Dr. Vientos Plotz, who is now faculty at Missouri. She was an internal medicine resident, and she was actually my classmate in vet school. So I went to her office and I was like, what are we going to do? Her family is well connected in the veterinary world. Her dad is a veterinarian, well-known veterinarian in Puerto Rico. Her mom is the manager for one of the emergency hospitals in Puerto Rico. So again, we sat down and said, oh, wow, it's really bad. What are we going to do? So we just said, let's, everybody's going to go ahead and start helping the people. Let's just figure out how to help the animals. So we started asking people through Facebook, like, hey, we want to do this, blah, blah. Started a GoFundMe account. People started donating money. People started donating supplies in Florida. And we were like, how are we going to get this supplies to Puerto Rico? But again, it just kept communication. These Air Force dudes were going to get a rented Air Force plane and fly down to Puerto Rico. So they said, hey, bring all your supplies to, I can't remember where in the East Coast of Florida, to this military base, and we're taking everything to Puerto Rico. And we're like, okay. So we asked people, hey, can you do a drive-by in Miami, Tampa, whatnot, and bring all the supplies to this location? People did. And that was our first supplies to Puerto Rico. And again, we started also accumulating money. So that helped us with buying supplies in the island or shipping supplies. companies started donating. I remember receiving at the Missouri hospital, I received like 6 boxes of vaccines. And I'm like, okay, I'm in Missouri. How in the world are we going to send this to Puerto Rico? And I at that point, Dr. Vientos Plus, she started contacting random people, and it's like, are you flying to Puerto Rico? Yeah, we're gonna bring a bag to you to the San Luis airport, and you're gonna fly that back to Puerto Rico. And that's how we started sending vaccines. Like we actually in Missouri, we got donated a few bags. We make them like a cooler kind of thing inside, and started putting vaccines in there. And just anybody that would travel to Puerto Rico, they would take Vets for Puerto Rico back with them. and through there, our focus was vaccines, rabies. There is an endemic species that has rabies in the island, a mongoose. So we were worried about rabies. We were also worried about leptospirosis. Of course, people having issues with the water, where they were getting their water from. And in 2018, we realized that a lot of pets were not, owned animals were not spayed and neutered. So from the data from all those vaccine clinics, it's like, man, we really need to spay and neuter animals. And fortunately, the Humane Society of the United States, which was also involved in helping giving aid to Puerto Rico, they have the same thing in mind. So they're like, can you help us figure out how we can bring these groups to the island and do massive spay and neuter clinics? We said yes. I started off about 5 or 6 groups, and we were spaying and neutering. Each group was spaying and neutering about 1,000 animals every round. It was a whole week of spays and neuters. So, we spayed and neutered. We did 8 rounds in total, and we spayed and neutered from 5 to 9,000 animals on each round. Overall, it was like 60,000 animals that we spayed and neutered through a 2-year span. And unfortunately, because of the pandemic, that project ended, but our organization continues. Now we're actually lucky that local government has been asking for our services and bringing in funding for that. So I fly to Puerto Rico every 2 months, and I do spay and neuter clinics. In a week and a half, I'll be in Puerto Rico.
Wow. And just to remind people for perspective, you live in California, which is Pacific time, and go all the way to Puerto Rico every 2 months. And you said you take a group of people with you each time, right?
Yeah. So we recruit vets. So we will recruit vets from the States or from Puerto Rico. Usually we work with more local doctors, but when we want to do a large scale event, and what I call large will be more than 200 animals a day, I start recruiting. So we have this event coming up, and we have about 12 vets that are helping us, and I would like to say about 6 of them or 7 are coming from the States.
Oh, wow. And so how did you decide to actually make this a full nonprofit? What benefits did that bring, and what of kind of the pros and the cons to that have you kind of discovered?
So when we started the GoFundMe account, started receiving funding, a lot of people said, are you 501c3? I didn't know what 501c3 meant. That's the IRS nonprofit designation. I do have a friend that's a lawyer who helped me a lot with creating the nonprofit and applying for all these documents. And he's like, yeah, if you start getting money and you don't have a 501c3, then that money might be taxable. So, you have to protect yourself. You have to protect the entity. So, yeah, we applied that same year, 2017. Again, he helped us a lot. Like a lot of people told us, oh, it takes about 6 months to get the 501c3. He did it within 3 weeks. And yeah, we got our designation. And again, the nonprofit has continued going, and funding comes in and out. It's just a matter. It also depends how active we want to be. Like during the pandemic, we were slow, so I wasn't applying for funding, but now I'm applying for funding, and the funding does appear. That's what I tell a lot of people. Contact me to ask me about nonprofits and whatnot. I think the first thing is, what is your focus? When we started, and we were fairly successful, people would say, I want a nonprofit to help Puerto Rico. I'm what kind of help? And I saw a lot of nonprofits being that were just, came up and they didn't last they just lasted a few months. Because again, they didn't have a purpose, a real purpose of what they were going to do. They were just like, oh, we want to help. So yeah, and again, we still have our purpose right now. Like I mentioned, in 2018, our focus switched from vaccinations to spays and neuters, and we actually do both. I like to do vaccine clinics. They're a good way to engage the community, and you can see a lot of animals. Of course, a lot easier than spaying and neutering. But yeah, that's vaccine clinics is how we do outreach, and then spays and neuters is how we try to prevent, because there's a horrible stray animal overpopulation in the island, especially cats. There's so many cats in the streets. So yeah.
Well, and I see a theme from the contracts and, or the financial aspect of it. And then even this, it does pay to find somebody who knows what they're doing to be part of the team. And
that is a good point. Yes.
Yes. And I think we even talked about this just kind of briefly in our pre-call. And that was, just the importance of knowing that you don't have to know how to do everything. There is so much value. You will love life so much better when you know how to delegate.
I'm going to give you an example.
Okay.
Which is happening as we speak. So we did a vaccine clinic in December, and we are the whole point was, fireworks and how animals get super stressed. Usually in Puerto Rico, we see an uptick of people saying, I lost my pet. The pet goes crazy because of fireworks and somehow escapes the house. So we did a big campaign into teaching people what trazodone was. This was more for dogs. At some point, I'll have to do gabapentin for cats. But so we did a clinic where we were going to give trazodone to dogs and microchips. And of course, we vaccinated them as well. So we microchipped, I think, like 80 pets. And I'm the one who usually brings all the paperwork back and registers the microchips. And I am a vet sitting here in the computer doing something that any person can do. So I just told my mom, the nonprofit will pay you for this, but please, can you sit down on a computer and register all these microchips? And she did. And, it's just an example of outsourcing, but we were, I mentioned the student loan planner. And people would think, I don't want to spend $500. And it's like, it will give you so much peace of mind, those $500. Same as an accountant. One of the things that triggered the finance part of me was in 2000, while I was doing my internship, I also did some relief work. And I paid so much taxes on that relief work. I was so mad. I was like, I didn't make any money. I thought I was like, oh, awesome. But what happened? I did not have any bookkeeping. I never kept up with my mileage, any expenses that I did for those relief work, which are deductibles. And I just didn't know that. And again, if I would have just hired an accountant, that person would have probably, even though I might have spent $1,000 in the accountant, probably would have saved me money on my taxes. So it's I would have spent less time being mad, and then, probably save more money or have more money on my bank account. So again, there are things that you just need to outsource. You can't do it all. If you're a vet, focus on being a vet.
It's so true, because not only can they probably save you money, they're saving you time. And like you said, it's that the mental well-being of just knowing that somebody who knows what they're doing has it under control. And if we keep talking about we want work-life balance and all of those things, like it actually ends up better, all three elements in the long run, if you do like take it off your own shoulders and give it to somebody else. So I think I'm preaching to the choir. So I think we're all probably learning this, but it really is true.
Yeah, I another thing that I'm bored of another nonprofit, and we have been talking about boundaries a lot, and it's you got to set your boundaries. You got to say, do I really want to spend time doing this? And if the answer is no, outsource it. That's how I feel about a lot of things. If you really are not passionate about what you're doing, outsource it. I'm sure you can. You're making enough money to outsource something to somebody that you can pay less than your hourly rate.
And they probably will enjoy it far better than you will.
Yes.
That's the other thing. Your mom probably had no problem typing those in.
No,
she probably enjoyed it.
She's retired. She actually used to work at a human hospital with medical records. So this is something that is not new to her, like getting the information from the patient and transferring it to another website or whatnot. So yeah, nothing new to her. And yeah, she's retired. So she has the time to do it.
Perfect. Love it. All right. Well, before we go into our final 4 questions, is there anything else that maybe I should have asked or that you've been thinking about around the veterinary profession?
No, I really have enjoyed the conversation. As far as it has been a lot of topics within this one episode, but certainly, again, I am trying to empower vet students. And also, I'm not the best at this, but I'm also learning how to set boundaries. And I feel like that is something that's very important for veterinarians overall.
Absolutely. And, please send me all of the links for your nonprofit. I'll make sure to put those in the show notes for everyone.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. So final 4 questions. The first question is, what is something people may get wrong about you?
I'm really straightforward. And I actually learned this in Missouri. When I was doing research, you can't bullshit your way out of research. If you have a mentor and they know a lot more about the subject than you, it's just, I learned like, man, I cannot bullshit my way out of this presentation or this topic or whatnot. So I'm really straightforward. In English, I don't do it that much, but in Spanish, I swear a lot. So I'm sure people are like, who the hell is this person? Like, this guy is mean. And frankly, I'm not. I love my stuff. Again, I do these events in Puerto Rico with volunteers. And it's because we created this family-oriented nonprofit. People love what they're doing. And as the person running the events, I want people to enjoy it. I usually want my staff to enjoy it first. And then I want the owners that bring their animals in to enjoy it as well. But my main focus is I need my volunteers to be enjoying what they're doing so that they come tomorrow. Because again, we do 3, 4, 5-day events. It's hard to have volunteers show up 5 days in a row. So yeah, I'm a nice person, but I'm pretty straightforward.
Straightforward is not always bad. Clear can be very appreciated. So I could definitely tell you're good at building trust. So that could be a very good quality.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yes.
So the second question is, do you have like a hidden skill or an interest?
God, they make you think.
Good.
No, I guess my hidden skill is the finance component. When I sit down with people and we just go into this tangent, it's just I'm weird. I like numbers. I like doing Excel sheets with, right now for our event coming up, I've been doing Excel sheets as to expenses and whatnot. And the event hasn't even happened, but I'm just prepping for our bookkeeping and figuring out, is this, are we going to break even? Which is what you want as a nonprofit. So yeah, I like numbers, like finances, and like to talk about finances too.
Good. That's also a good quality to have in these times. So excellent. The third question is there something on your bucket list?
My wife is finishing her residency. So my bucket list is full of I want to travel a lot because I've been traveling a lot, but it's mostly work related or nonprofit related. But now I want to travel with my wife. So bucket list is, I don't really have a location right now, where we have a few trips to Mexico, which, I'm in California, so it's an easy flight down there. So I have a few trips planned to Mexico, but otherwise traveling a lot in 2023 and 2024. I'm going to try to do that. Nice.
And last question is, what is something you are most grateful for?
Family and health. Through the pandemic, again, I'm a huge finance geek, I guess, and usually want to make sure I have my finances in line and whatnot. But last 2 years has been more of health and family and happiness, and it's been pretty rewarding. The money's gonna always show up. Again, we're veterinarians. I talked about the high demand that there is for our profession, so money's gonna be there. But it's just being healthy and enjoying with family. Again, traveling. I like traveling with my wife. I like to involve my parents or my wife's parents in our traveling engagements. So for me, family is very important.
This has been the Vet Life Reimagined podcast. Whether you are listening or watching on YouTube, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Please make sure you are subscribed to catch all these amazing people in our profession. Also, send this episode to someone you think who would appreciate it. Have a recommendation for someone who would be a good guest? Please reach out on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook. There aren't that many Dr. Sprinkles. Until next time, Vet Lifers.